Come on, ma, please.
Needles, syringes, water fight hinges. We love food for just to hit 20. Oh, look, oh no, watch them on them brain out. 30 to the follow.
Killa Kela Fortified featuring Patoine. Available on all good music platforms now.
Instagram UK Frontline.
Beatbox created.
Killa Kela.
And we're here to talk about world music and street culture.
Killa Kela Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Killa Kela Podcast, transmitting to you live and direct, all music and street culture. We ain't playing around. Now, you may be watching curiously on the video here, and yeah, we're completely masked up with something very, very special, courtesy of my guest, my boy. Listen, my teenage, inside is going on fleek right now. Ladies and gentlemen, inside the ride, the Don, the SHOK-1.
Hi mate, thank you for having me on the show and all of that.
My pleasure, my G. How are you?
I'm good, man, yeah.
What's been going
It's a
on?
hectic start to the year.
Yeah.
It's rushing about, just trying to get everything started and trying to deal with, the ends of last year, as you do.
Yes. Just trying to kind of... It is loose ends, isn't it? It really is loose ends.
It is, yeah. I mean, last year things just went up to a completely different level, so I'm sort of trying to adjust to that level now and put things up. Yeah.
I think with every new year comes a new challenge. Well, that's one thing I will say, actually. At the top of this year, I have fulfilled my quota of overcoming fear. And as every year approaches, you want to just feel like you're investing a little bit, don't you? Like, you know what, I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do it good. And when you conquer some fear at the top, it's always good, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's all about new challenges and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, I don't do that many interviews, so that's a little bit not a fear thing, but a little unusual thing for me.
Well, this is what I was going to say. For those of you that have been living under some sort of rock for the last 2 decades, SHOK is one of the premier artists to hit not only the streets but to hit bespoke stores, to be able to carry a torch that surpasses the culture that both of us are pedigree to. He's a creative artist, graffiti writer, street artist. He's a whole different bunch of things nowadays, brother, and it's such a pleasure to see you grow.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's always what I'm aiming to do.
Yeah,
that's what I've been about over the last few decades. It's just growing.
Yeah, it is. And I recall many copies of graffiti magazines where your name would be a hodgepodge of loads of other pieces and things, and to see a lot of people that come and check out, that come and be guests on a podcast, to emerge out of those kind of ashes and do some really crazy things. I was saying to you earlier, actually, I will bring this up. You did come up on my explore page on Instagram, and this is really where I had to re-up. I was like, fuck man, you doing that? There was a real moment where I was like, I could not, and I just went straight to your page, and your page is it's totally reserved for whatever you want to put on there. But when I see Swizzbeatz and Usher and Bally and crazy things popping off for you right now, I'm just so fucking, I'm proud, man. I'm a fan. I'm proud, and it's fucking great to see. You know what I mean?
Thank you, man.
How's that been? How's that journey been?
It's been really good. I mean, I used to do kind of working with brands a long time ago, and then for various reasons I stopped doing it. And I started this new chapter of my work, which is the X-ray thing. And then for the longest time, probably about 10 years or something, I said, okay, I'm not going to work with any brands. This is just completely just an art thing, and it's me on my own. And I did. There were things that I did that were commercials, so I had my print releases and this and that, but it was just a fine art thing. I wasn't working with any brands. And then about a year and a half ago, I said, I'll open the books and I'll try a couple of collaborations and I'll see what I think about it. And I did I did a project with Delta Airlines, and I did a project with Rag & Bone, the fashion brand. And they were really, really nice projects, and they treated me with the utmost respect, and I got to work with, some really high-level people. So the Delta Airlines project was through Whedon and Kennedy, which you probably know is Nike's gigantic agency over in New York. And the Rag & Bone thing came because Marcus Wainwright, the CEO of the company, who's an English guy, is a fan of my work. So they were a different level of collaboration from what I was doing when I was a kid. Because before it might have been some advertising agency call you up, and then there's a person who's on a department and this type of thing. But these are things that come from the top down. So Marcus, for example, he invited me and Heracut and Stanley Donwood, the Radiohead guy, to go and paint the new store over in Soho here in London. And it wasn't like it wasn't like a commission in the things I'm doing now. They're not commissions in the sense that somebody's like, and we need you to do this, and we need it to be this big. Yeah. These are things where they're just bringing you as an artist because they're down with you as an artist and just letting you be an artist, which I think is a huge difference because I've had my feelings about those kinds of projects over the years, but the kind of level that it's happening on here is like. It's more like you're working together as equals just to try and do something cool. Yes. And it's more, for me, like a contemporary form of patronage. So it's not like doing a job. It's just like people are saying, we're down with what you're doing as an artist. And I'm saying, I'm down with what you're doing. I like what you're doing too. And then you can do something together and it's great for both parties and the fans really like it, and everyone's happy. And I think that's really different. Yeah, for sure. And it also comes out of the fact that the movements that I'm associated with are in a completely different plane of respect from where they used to be like 10 or 20 years ago. So,
yeah, the plates have moved a lot, haven't they?
Yeah, because starting early 2000s, you have headlines where they're talking about person X made 1.4 million pounds and Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, and all this kind of thing. Which I actually don't give a fuck about any of that, you know what I mean? But I know that a lot of people do, like the man on the street does, and people in commerce do, and a lot of people do. So I don't think it was that we changed, but the world changed around us.
That's right, absolutely.
And I got up one morning and I was like, where am I now? I'm in Bizarro universe. Like I wasn't, because the first 20 years of my career, we were like fucking social pariahs, We used to shop at jams like you were talking about, like Scratch.
Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll get into it.
Those Scala days.
Yeah.
And speaking in that period, I mean, we were these kids who used to show up all covered in all mud and shit, just come from painting and have an argument with the bouncers. The same argument, every time, it's like, look, I had a fucking row with you about this for the last 6 months. I always show up. And I always have cans, and I know the people that are running the club, you know what I mean? But basically these off-key people, and you go and stand in the club in the corner and screw face everybody or whatever, and they're all looking at you like, who the fuck are those guys?
Outlaws, man. They're the outlaws.
And they bought some brand new white superstars for it, and you're looking like shit. You're covered in mud and paint. And then you get up one morning and all of that stuff has become fashionable, and then suddenly there's probably people running around right now who probably got jeans that look like my piece of shit jeans that I was wearing back in that period to try and look like that.
It's crazy how that goes around, isn't it?
It's what happens, and it's what's always happened.
Yeah.
And it's not. I know people that are completely on a level of rejecting that, and I totally understand that because I was that person for the longest time, and I kind of still am in a way that person. Like you're in this weird kind of, you grow up and no, that's cheating. You can't do that. You have to do it with a straw. Have a little straw or something.
You need a little hole, don't you? Sorry, I'm just having a drink of my drink and
ruined the illusion. People really thought that you were.
I had no face.
People really thought that you were X-ray. Yeah, I've never. I say you, as an artist, that you have to be in your time and you have to work in your time and deal with what's there. And I'm not super comfortable with all of it, already, because we had this little pre-conversation thing. So there are things that I find quite strange, and I find it quite strange. Like I say, that for the longest time, you know what it was? I mean, there's a level that people are like a pariah, and there's a level that people just don't even give a fuck.
What's a pariah? What's that?
Just like a social outcast, you know?
I see,
like,
okay.
you know, like everyone's gone in this direction and you've gone in this direction, and then people are like, what's his fucking problem? You know what I mean?
Which a lot of creatives do just by accident.
Of course they do. It's what being creative is. It's what being creative is. And just to have everything change around you like that is quite jarring, and a lot of people I think they just run away from it, and that's totally vile.
Yeah, because
valid,
you're
you
going
know?
down that route and you're thinking to yourself, oh my god, where am I going? What's going on? And no one else is doing it. It's that kind of feeling,
it's
isn't it?
when you're in a subculture and then your subculture becomes mainstream, and you still think you're in a subculture, but they don't, and the mainstream rules and the subculture rules are completely different. Like the people.
Oh,
think
that's
differently.
cold. Now you've got me thinking. Okay, so hang on. So back to what you were saying about the appropriation of like wearing your social appropriation of like wearing a pair of stained jeans. Like you're wearing them, or you would have been wearing them for a bona fide reason, but now it's become so passé.
Not even for a reason, just because you're a scab and you don't care. That's not a reason, because that would be affected. It's just kind of like.
Because you're not doing it for a reason.
Yeah, everything is all fucked up, but like nevertheless, people are kind of saying, "What's that guy's image?" Like a couple of years ago, like someone wrote to me and they said, "Oh, I really like your image. Like you don't give a fuck and you say what you think." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean that's not my image. That's me. You know what I mean? That's not an image. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how else to be apart from that. I wish I wasn't like that. Like it works better for everyone else, and they're not like that. You know what I mean? I wish I was, but I can't keep my mouth shut. So you know, I have to do everything the hard way.
Is that hence the mask there, brother? Is that the reminder, the mask of like, okay, right? Because what we're doing right now, for those of you who can't
in there, yeah. That's a part of it.
It's a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
See the nail on the head, you see. See, I mean, what we're wearing right now is the Bally, Bally. It's the Bally and your collaboration with the brand. And bro, like, how do you go from that point there where you are that kid? Because we met each other at a very, it was a backpacker era of like creative athleticism within the rap scene.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree? It was like a time.
Yeah, definitely.
There was a lot of goings on and a lot of activity, and we'd cross paths so much. Like I can't even count it, the amount of times where it's like I'd either bumped into you or I thought I did because I saw one of your pieces. It was like so much going on, wasn't it?
Well, we were both. I think in the period you're talking about, we were both quite squarely kind of involved in the orthodox hip hop scene, and I think it's fair to say that we were both faces on that scene. But then I think it's also true that we've both gone on a little journey, like we were talking about. We've been on a little journey, and you've gone here and you've gone there, and you did a little step and you did another little step, and then you end up in a different place. No, there's because you chose to go. Where I've ended up, like where I am now, no one's more surprised about it than I am. And then I'm super, like I'm like, Christ, I don't even know like where I'm going to end up next, because I didn't set out to be in any of these places. So I never set out to work with luxury fashion brands. It wasn't a goal for me. I know there are people who come into like maybe a bit more on the street art kind of side of the thing rather than the graffiti side of things where I come from. That people who probably did set out and they probably did say, yeah, you know what, I would like to go and work with Louis Vuitton. I'm going to kind of try and push in that direction and I'm going to make some moves. But I never thought about that. Like all I ever wanted to do was to make stuff that I thought was cool and my peers thought were cool. And I know you get that because that's just a basic thing. That's a basic subculture thing. You know, but I don't know who's going to be watching this because I don't know who's looking at me and you these days. And so maybe it's a good idea to just set down some basic principles. That's something I learned in the last however many years. It's just like, I think everybody in the way that they deal with the world, they assume that everybody's more or less like them and they think more or less like them. Like everybody does. It's the only way you can do it because you're in your headspace and you go, well, I'm going to start out by assuming that Kela think mainly like me. And then I say, well, I think this. And you go, well, I don't think that at all. I think that. And then you find out who the other person is. And then in doing that, you realise, oh, well, I thought that. I didn't realise I was thinking that. I just thought that was a given. Yeah. And I realised that, you know, the more that I was kind of brave, like you were talking about, and just heading out into different spaces, the more I thought God, there's all this stuff like I just thought was just standard that wasn't even needed to be talked about. And it's almost like some of my basic tenets, some of the things that I grew up on, are like really like esoteric, like weird concepts these days, like really off-key, you know, like odd ideas that you actually have to tell people about and explain them. And I find, and it irks the hell out of me, because if there's one thing I think that's important to do as an artist or creative person, is to try and avoid cliches, or at least unless you're doing a cliche on purpose to be a dick or something, you can do that. But
irony.
But you don't want to just be doing some standard shit, because otherwise, what's the point? Well, that's how I feel about it. No, I just what's the point? And it's not putting down people who do want to do that, but like from my point of view, like I just sit there and think, what's the point in doing the same thing as everyone else?
Absolutely.
And then in the end, all I've got to do is jump up and down and go, hey, look at me, I'm over here, you know, and try and get people to look at it when it was already there anyway, you know. So I feel like that's redundant. I don't see the point in doing that.
There's definitely a sentiment of that within your art. For those of you who have not been aware of or encountered SHOK-1 stuff, you know, and this has been like a development over a number of decades. This wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to do that today. This has been like a painstaking, and through our conversation, it's a painstaking process of which you've managed to put yourself in a position where not only like no one else can do this shit, you know, it's like, that's fucking mad, but you're the X-ray designs that you do are so identifiably from source that you get people hitting you up saying someone's ripped you off the other day, and they send you it, and you can immediately go and get them because you know that that's your shit. That is like, it epitomizes what you're saying.
It's true. I think the thing that you said earlier and before we were talking is a really important point to make. This thing about like you know, like when you come up in subculture, like, you know, I expect that the beatbox community knows who you are. That's a given. That's a given. You know what I mean? That's not. And when I was in Graf or British Graf or whatever, I think it's reasonable to sort of say that British Graf people would know who I was.
Yeah.
But when you head out into the wider world, and there's a great big, infinitely large world of culture and stuff and people and things that sit outside of your subculture, which is really like a little kind of catchment area of culture. And you start dealing with other people and you find out how they interact, then it's really significant to me that, and I'm amazed by it, that you get people who really aren't from your background at all, who really you don't have any reason to expect them to get it, who kind of do, who do engage.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, I mean, it ends up that I think in some degree like I'm like a popular artist now, which is really weird for me because I really never set out to be that.
Yeah, it's true.
And I don't want people to listen to that and say, oh, look at this arrogant wanker, you know. I'm not saying I don't want to be that. I'm just saying that it wasn't a goal for me. My goal was, you know, like I have like quite a clear ideology behind what I do. It doesn't necessarily affect how people perceive the end result.
Yeah.
I mean, like if the ideology is right, and then you end up making this thing or that thing, and then people act in this kind of way, and that's what you wanted, then the ideology was right and the work was right. And if the work doesn't reflect your ideology, then the work failed.
That's
and then
right.
you've got to go back and you've got to tune up your game. You can't blame anyone else about that. People do that all the time.
Right.
People do it all the time. This is what I was going to say earlier on. I didn't get to this point. It's just to say
Now we got it to it now.
It irks me that I've become a cliche when I think that one of my roles and one of my remits is to try and avoid, you know, like super cliches, because I've become.
What's the cliche? Sorry.
A cliche.
I know what a cliche is, but why are you a cliche?
Just the cliche that on some level that I'm a misunderstood artist, which is just such a corny. It's such a corny cliche. It's just like, oh no, people aren't understanding where this thing is coming from. But I think that's not. It's not necessarily a condemnation of other people. It's just that because of the way that culture has kind of surrounded what we were doing and has engaged with it, and it's meant that my work and other people's work has ended up in this much broader sphere of people. You know, just a crazy amount of people looking at you, and then it's just a statistically guaranteed fact that you're going to end up with people looking at you who don't really know where you came from and don't really know what you're about. So you're sort of not really understood. And then you have interactions that are based on that, and you sit there and think, well, they don't really get me, and I don't really get them, and it's all a bit tense.
I see.
And that's why I'm saying, and then it irks me, because I feel like I'm being backed into a corner. I've got to say, gosh, man, I feel like a misunderstood artist, but I actually do feel like a misunderstood artist. And then I'm annoyed. I'm really annoyed with myself about that, because I feel like I feel like it's my responsibility. I always feel like it's my responsibility. I feel it's my responsibility to address that, because I think the direction that the art is going in, like the commitment and the risk taking and the energy of it, should be coming outwards from the artist to the world, and not on the way back. So you shouldn't be making art and kind of saying, I don't like the notion that you're making art with because you want this to come back. I think this
as a response.
This is a point that gets like thought about and lamented over, and this kind of thing. Like millions of artists I see all the time, every day. If I can bear to look at my Facebook, it's full of like artists kind of going, oh, this thing happened and it's shit, and why am I being treated like this, and why is that person being treated like that and I'm not being treated like this, and it comes out of like, what you're really saying is, I had an expectation that this should happen and this thing didn't happen.
It's your ego
and that's
talking.
the world's fault and not my fault. And I never did that, you see. Which is not to say that I didn't have a load of really, really crappy things happen over the last 7 decades.
Hold on,
because everyone's journey's full of crappy things, and that's fine.
Now you've come to say that.
But I took responsibility for that. And I said, right, I didn't get the outcome I wanted, so that's for me to run my game tighter, or for me to learn this new thing, or for me to change that thing. And if I don't want to change that thing, then that's fine. But I can't expect the world to change around me to suit what I want.
Yeah.
And I think that's really simple. I think that's a basic life philosophy. But I don't think a lot of people get that.
No, it gets lost with desire and ego and a lot of over ambition for things that, I mean, to be fair, like in terms of the graph world, early graph world at least, beyond me, there was no expectation other than, this is fun, we're going to get up, we're going to do this, we're going to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
There's but then street art comes along, and then there's this whole kind of platform that sets precedents, and I think you get a lot of additionaries, other things. Just to go back to what you were saying, I think the pressure on you, soldiers coming out the trenches getting shot at, that shit happens. I think, however, the way that you've dealt with your representation of understating, over-delivering, is that right? Yeah, under-promising, over-delivering with your art, I think that definitely shows with your movements.
I think I think that's a really powerful idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if I always achieve that, and thank you for saying that you think that I do, because I think that's that's a really flattering comment. But I think we live in an age. Thank you. But I think we live in an era like where, because of social networking and Web 2.0 and all of this new technology and how it impinges on everyone's lives, there's this kind of almost an expectation that people are going to talk themselves up. Like you were talking early on about selfies and stuff.
I was talking out, boys and girls.
We're both quite uncomfortable with selfies. He's a performer, so he doesn't have an excuse to do it.
The selfie culture.
I was saying, I don't actually feel like I'm a performer. I actually had a debate about this with my lawyer last year, because I said, I go out and paint in public, and then people go, oh, look, there's one of those guys, and they turned our thing into a tourist attraction, essentially.
Of course,
so there's all this kind of strange engagement that wasn't happening a little while ago. I do a little segue here, because I wanted to say this. You were mentioning, Boyd, you were mentioning Solo earlier on.
Big up Solo 1.
Big up Solo 1, old friend of both of us.
Yeah, top boy.
Boyd, last year, I think it was, he put up like a video on Facebook, and it was... there was a jam in Leicester City Centre, and I think it was like 1995 or 1998 or something. So it preempts when this big explosion and this big cultural shift happened. And it's a really funny video to watch. Like I'll see if I can find it, and I'll send you the link if it's still around. because all the heads of the time are in this thing, you know, like, and we're all really young, and there's that thing where you can, oh, look, my God, look at Keith, he looks like a baby, look, there's help, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
All the heads were there. But the thing that I took away from it, the thing that I thought was salient, was that there was fucking no one there. There was no one there. It's really crazy. Like, the video goes on for a half hour or whatever.
Well, and no
And
kind of tourist action, nothing like that.
all the only other people apart from us that you see in the whole video is like one old guy comes by with his dog and he doesn't even look at what everyone's doing. And if you did that now, I mean, you could get, you know, like one, you know, super toy who's just started painting the same day, start just doing some thing, and you can guarantee there's going to be like 100 people there. The iPhones are going to be out, and it's going to be broadcast on the internet, you know, and no one cared. And you know what? It was kind of really nice to see. I was just like, wow, look, all these people who got to paint, and they didn't have to kind of like
and explain what they're doing and who they are and where they're from.
And that's where this conversation with my lawyer was going, because I said, look, what I do is kind of basically really difficult, and it takes a long time, and so I have to sort of essentially, I don't have to. I mean, I choose to go and paint in public, and what painting in public means for me is that I have to stand out, sort of essentially like open to the outside world while I'm doing my thing. Now, a lot of artists, they can't do that. Like, I've had other artists tell me, you know, like one of the guys that I'm working with, he says, I paint, but I'm building a building for me to paint in, because if anyone else is there, then I freeze up and I have to stop. And he said, if my wife comes in to bring me a cup of tea, that deads it for me. That's it, it's over, I have to stop.
To that level.
Yeah, I mean, that's his personal thing. But like the fact that we've grown up, you know, like essentially being out in public from the get, like before you're anyone, you're in public to start off with, it's like so contra to like how orthodox kind of art, where you talk about like an easel painter, you know, or whatever. You go sit in like a freezing garret or whatever for 6 months or however long, and generate a body of work, and then go try get a show, and then you put the stuff in a room and you try and get people to come to the room and look at it.
Yeah.
And the whole notion of audience and the production of the art are separated, but it's not so for us. You know what I mean? Like the whole thing.
That's crazy. I never thought about that.
Well, it's a beautiful thing in one sense,
Yeah.
because you know I've said, you know, like I'm doing some sort of orthodox shows again at the moment. So I did one with Bally in Tokyo. It was the first show I did in Tokyo last year, and I'm working on some other things, and I might do. I'm quite into the idea of just doing a solo pop-up on my own, you know, not with any partners or anything, but like, you know, I can finance it myself and control the whole thing and do what I want with it. I might do that.
Wicked.
And I've kind of been off and on about that over the years. I mean, it's not anything that's new to me. Like, I think I first did like a normal show in like 1990, I think, or something like that. And I've gone through periods with it. I've gone through periods where I think, you know, that would be quite exciting and different. You know, I've been kind of painting walls or whatever. There's some things that you can do in that space that you can't do in this space. I'll go and do it. But it's always weird for us. It was weird for me anyway, because, you know, like when you paint in public, that entire process of making art in the orthodoxy is kind of compressed into like one experience. So
Yeah.
you have the studio, and you have the artist, and you have the audience, and you have the canvas, and you have the show, and you have, you know, things like the artist talking to the audience or whatever. And when you paint in the street, you do that all at the same time. So it's incredibly elegant and concise. Like it all happens at the same time, and you don't have to establish. You know, like in this is where some of the kind of weirdness and the conflicts and the misunderstandings can happen, because, sure, you know, like it might be, you know, like a door or a brick wall or whatever it is you're painting on, and sure there might be a pavement, and sure there might be some people passing by, but at that point in time, this whatever square foot is your studio, and they're in your studio. And this is a weird situation,
in your
because,
zone, in your
because
place.
In a sense it's not your studio. In a sense it's a public place. In a sense it's your it's everyone's pavement. It's a free right of way, so we can go through. But also there's a kind of there's another sense that it's a private space, that you're in doing a private thing. That's how I feel about it when I paint in public. It's a really strange thing, because you're doing something that's very, very private and very, very personal, but you're doing it very, very publicly.